Gym leaders. 8 top trainers selected as barriers to pass to become the very best. The majority of Pokemon generations have a set of 8 gym leaders, and each one is unique with their own gimmick, team, etc. Of course, there are gym leaders that are very iconic, ones that are known to give the player a tough time, and ones that are also just complete pushovers. What about the ones that aren't quite the best, but are in that sort of in-between spot, if you will? The ones that we do remember, but are overshadowed by other prominent gym leaders of their respective regions, whether being an absolute unit, or, like I mentioned before, a walk in the park. Today, we cover the most underrated gym leader of every region, and throw some light on how awesome they can be. So, without any further ado, let's just hop right in. Kanto, the region that started it all. Truth be told, you really can't say any of them are underrated, because these are definitely the most remembered and revered in the entire franchise. One gym leader in Kanto is even considered to be the strongest of them all. However, if I had to choose one out of these 8, it would definitely be Erika. Her teams are honestly pretty cool in both the Kanto and Johto games. More than likely, if you chose the Charmander line or had a decent flying or other fire type Pokemon, she was probably pretty easy to you. But I don't think we can quite underestimate what the grass type can do. Her Gen 1 team has the power of Gen 1 Wrap, and we know how irritating that can be. Not to mention her team also comes equipped with the powder moves of Stun Spore, Sleep Powder, and Poison Powder. This can cause some issues if you don't just breeze through her team. Her Heart Gold and Soul Silver team is also really neat, running a Sun team. Erika just proves that the grass typing is pretty underrated, especially if she is able to pull off Sun and use those powder moves for utility to piss you off. The same sentiment applies to her Pokemon World Tournament team as well. Her kimono design is also adorable and top-notch. Erika is easily one of my favorite gym leaders in the entire franchise. For Johto, there were actually 2 gym leaders I couldn't decide on, so I'm gonna include them both here, Pryce and Janine. Janine, I understand, is a Kanto gym leader, but because she did debut in Gen 2, it just felt more natural to put her here as a brief mention. First off, Pryce though. He got done dirty. Bad. He is an ice type gym leader and didn't get equipped with Lapras or a Jinx. Instead, he got a Seal and Dugong. What the hell, man? Piloswine is fine, but Seal and Dugong? Are you serious? Outside of his team though, I still think he's pretty underrated. His design is simple and effective, albeit maybe just a little too blue, but hey, that's the ice type for you. What's interesting about his gym is the fact you can actually do it as your 5th badge after you beat Morty. So sometimes it's just fun to do his gym first before your team is more fleshed out to see if the difficulty changes in any meaningful way. He's an old and wise gym leader, and I think he deserves more respect than Game Freak gave him. Thank Arceus, my prayers were heard for his Pokemon World Tournament team, because this team slaps and is much better. Before I move on to Hoenn, I want to briefly mention Janine. Awesome design, her father Koga became an Elite 4 member, and now she strives to become better than him. Plus, I really like the extra stuff they did for her personality in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. You can interact with her in a few ways in these games. One, being able to see between the hours of 4 to 6 p.m, where she can be found on Victory Road on her way to deliver her father's lunch. Another really cool gimmick is being able to see her and Falconer arguing which one of their fathers is better at the Celadon department store. Even though she wants to surpass him, the respect is still there. Janine is truly an awesome gym leader, and I think she's underrated. So, Hoenn could be argued for another gym leader, and I agree, Winona is pretty awesome. I could also bring up Watson and his terrifying Manectric. However, I want to give this slot to a leader who gets overshadowed by his teacher, Juan. Who remembers Juan's Kingdra? You know, the one that I mentioned in the top 10 strongest aces video? Double Team, Rest, and a Chestoberry. Looking at that set just makes me want to pull my hair out. I had to reset so many times fighting this thing as a kid, and it really did feel like more of a challenge than most of the gym leaders I had faced up to that point. His design and clothing choice is also on point, looking pretty silly and dapper, but I respect it. Another thing that I truly respect is that this gentleman brings a love disc for the 8th Gym Badge Challenge. I respect it because that's a pretty good facade for the terror that is to come. I also enjoyed the battle between him and Ash in the anime. It showed off more of Juan's personality. When I think of Generation 4 leaders, the ones that come to mind are Fantina, Candace, Gardenia, or even Volkner. A gym leader I really don't hear fans mention much though is Byron. I love the fact that he's the 6th gym leader and a steel type trainer, very similarly to Jasmine, only there are some differences. While they both use Steelix, Byron has a Bastiodon on his team, showcasing one of Sinnoh's fossil Pokemon. Not to mention, the dude's a miner and is probably responsible for half the ore Sinnoh uses as a source, while his son Rourke is the other half. Speaking of Rourke, yeah, they are father and son, and this is a pretty neat gimmick Game Freak brought here, also having a pretty interesting rivalry between the two of them. This rivalry is actually seen pretty strongly, because Rourke uses the opposite fossil Pokemon to his dad, being Cranidos/Rampardos. Rourke and Byron are also related to the Underground Man found in Eternus City. So the Grand Underground, one of Sinnoh's most memorable features, connects back to Byron and Rourke. I guess this entry goes to both Byron and Rourke, because you can't really talk about one without mentioning the other. I've been on a real Gen 5 kick lately, as I've been replaying Pokemon Black and White 2. Incredible games, by the way. But the gym leaders for Unova I want to talk about actually come from the original Black and White games, being Cress, Silent, and Chili. I would actually deem these three the most underrated gym leaders in the entire franchise. One, because it is the single most unique gym battle mechanic in any Pokemon game. Two, they break away from the typical monotype gym leader dynamic, giving the gym 3 typings instead. And 3, it's based on the starter Pokemon you chose, giving a new player the perfect way of learning the basics of Pokemon typings. The player will get an elemental monkey to cover the weaknesses their starter has. Hence, if you chose Snivy, the lady in the Dream Yard would give you Panpour. Trying to do this fight without the elemental monkey also makes this battle objectively harder. Truth be told, I'm probably not the only one who doesn't really have love for the elemental monkeys, as I wish they would have gotten an extra Pokemon to represent their typings. Chili, a Darumaka, Silent, a Sawaddle, and Cress, a Temple, alongside their monkey and Lillipup. Another question I ask is, how do genetics work in Pokemon? Because you begin to wonder if each of them dyed their hair to be their respective type, or if they're all naturally that hair color and they chose their type to reflect it. Kalos. Yeah, I really don't think many of these gym leaders are underrated, to be honest. And out of all the gym leaders in the Pokemon series, I feel Gen 6 has the most forgettable set. There are really only 3 I really like, being Corina, who is perfectly rated, Clement, the future is now, thanks to science, and of course Valerie, one of the best designed gym leaders out there. Wulfric is probably gonna leave coal in my stocking now. I do have to talk about someone here though, so I guess I'll talk about Viola. I actually really like Viola's design. It's adorable and quirky. I like to imagine that her main job isn't even being a gym leader, and she's actually a professional photographer while being a gym leader as a side hobby. This sentiment is actually true in the Pokemon anime, where her sister Alexa states she isn't at the Santaloon gym a lot of the time due to her job as being a photographer. Unlike most of the gym leaders in these set of games, it makes sense for her not to use Mega Evolution. I will never understand why everyone starting at Gym 3 or 4 didn't have a Mega in the game where that's the mechanic. And don't even get me started on the Elite Four. As the first gym leader, it does make sense for her to only have 2 Pokemon though. And with that, Vivillon is an absolute unit. She doesn't need any bugs after Surskit goes down. Her gym design also has a pretty sick gimmick, being a giant spiderweb you have to navigate. I think she's just neat overall, and I can probably talk more about her than I could the rest of the gym leaders not named Corina or Clement. For Alola, there are no gym leaders here, so I will just give a mention to my favorite trial captain being Mallow. I could go and talk about her from a game perspective, as her Totem Lurantis is truly one of the most challenging in the games in my opinion. Her anime story is what really touched my heart though. If you've seen the Pokemon Sun and Moon anime, you know exactly what I mean. Go watch it. Olivia is pretty awesome too, and I love the fact that she becomes an Elite Four member later on. Her and Brock, by the way, yeah, adorable. Alright, Galar might actually surprise some of you, but I gotta give it to Grandma. No, not that anime Grandma, this Grandma. Opal is one of the few gym leaders in Gen 8 that left any impression on me at all from a design standpoint. Nessa, Pierce, and Raihan were also pretty cool. Nessa being my personal favorite, with Pierce being a very close second. Opal is the only gym leader not named Pierce, who is also the leader of Team Yell, to actually affect the story. As per usual, most leaders really are just kind of there to test progression. I think her interactions with Bede are hilarious, and I love how she chose him as a replacement just for his fashion sense. Her big, long nose reminds me of a particular mad scientist whose evil building has a catchy jingle. Something, something, Duke Nukem Incorporated.
I've got balls of steel.
Did I get that right? I'm not really a Disney guy, to be honest. If Opal were the nemesis of a shiny Psyduck in a cool hat, she'd be the best Pokemon character in the entire franchise. All of her team as well also has really cool and memorable Pokemon on it. Plus, Ballenlea is the best town in Galar. It is also the best location possible for a fairy-type gym. Paldea has some of my favorite gym leaders to date, with my favorite of course being the streaming superstar, Iono. But I can talk about Iono in a different video. Instead, I want to talk about Katie. She is one of the few gym leaders with relation to other gym leaders, where Candace and Maylene are buddies, Rourke and Byron are father and son, plus rivals, and Janine and Falconer argue about whose dad is the best. What's neat about Katie though is the unique relationship to Kofu, being his apprentice. With this relationship, she is a baker, and she also offers you sweets after you beat her. What an absolute legend. She has a very wholesome, sweet, and innocent design, and with that, she's probably one of the most approachable characters in this universe outside of their gym leader status. Despite that sweetness though, she can also be pretty blunt, as she's one of the few people in the entirety of Pokemon to openly admit that they're going easy on an opponent just because she'd feel bad if she'd beat them. As for the Pokemon she uses, she has a Teddiursa, which is extremely adorable, and really does fit the bug type vibe very well. Now, imagine if they updated Scarlet and Violet to give her Ursaluna on her rematch team instead of Ursaring. That would be sick. Well, that wraps up what I consider to be the most underrated gym leaders / leaders of every Pokemon region. Now, there are definitely some other gym leaders I could have talked about, as each gym leader has their own personality and unique traits about them that make them great. What do you guys think though? Would you have changed any of these leaders up? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below.